Hello. The topic we're going to talk about in this session is insurance. Now, there's three different kinds of insurance that we use, and it's tenant or renter's insurance, landlord insurance, and then a general liability insurance that is charged to every owner if they're not on their insurance, on the landlord insurance, if it's not insured as additional insured. Then we have to get the general liability insurance to cover that. So I'm going to go over each one of these in a little bit of detail. It's pretty basic, but our renter's insurance is something that we promote, and it's through lease term solutions. The reason why we are actually trying to sell this particular insurance and being the conduit between the company and the tenant is just because we have a little more control over knowing that, yes, indeed, the tenant does have renter's insurance. Now, because we actually promote this particular product, it's we don't it's not a profit center for us, but there are a few advantages that I've noticed that we have with this particular insurance that no other renter's insurance really that I've seen covers, and that is number one, mold mitigation. Now, if for some reason the tenant does not let us know about a leaky under the sink, say there's something leaking plumbing, and it goes on for a while and creates mold, then which mold can happen within 72 hours and in a property. So water is one of the biggest killers in a property. So if, let's say, they do not report that, because some tenants may not know, some may not care, and then there's some that just may not care to know. But it's a $500 deductible, and it covers any type of mold mitigation, which can be thousands and thousands of dollars to get that all fixed, just depending on the extent of the damage. That's why it's so important for us to do annual inspections and check out, underneath each sink and make sure there's no leaks that they're not seeing. Now, per their lease, they're supposed to let us know if there's a problem. And, they have a due diligence, if you will, to do that. So that's one of the things that it's called a rider on the insurance policy. There's two other things. Number one is pet insurance. Well, now with a lot of the laws, anybody that says that they have a pet for comfort purposes, even, that's a service type of animal. And so, really, I don't want us to get in a pissing contest with anybody over that type of situation, over comfort animals, because it's just going to be more of an ADA type of a lawsuit, Americans with Disabilities Act. We don't want to get into federal lawsuits with that. So, this particular insurance does have that pet insurance. It only covers up to $1,000 of pet damage, which is not much, but it does add up with their deposit if there is pet damage. It is very costly for the owner to have to replace pad and carpet in a property because of pet damage. So this is a real big liability for the owner. Now, the third thing that we never like to talk about is bed bugs. But this has a bed bug rider. And there's new laws now that really lean it in the tenant's favor when it comes to bed bug mitigation and who pays for that. Now, bed bugs can get carried there from suitcase on, in an airport. If somebody's sitting in a bus, and they go to the gym, they can pick these things up and they just attach on to the clothing or suitcases and can very easily be transferred into a home. If there are bed bugs, this bed bug mitigation really tends to help out the owner, um, and the tenant. And I want you to look at these insurances as actually being beneficial to both the landlord and the tenant. Now, the bed bug mitigation, it's a $500 deductible, and I believe it only covers up to $1,000. We'll have to check into that a little more on the specifics, but it does help. Now, if there are attached units, like say this is a condo that we're renting out, well, the governor has pretty much stated that in multifamily type of dwellings, it's more of a landlord policy, or landlord liability, I should say. So with that said, they may end up having to pay that $500 deductible, just depending. Now, if somebody moves into a new property and all of a sudden, they get bed bugs, well, then most likely the previous tenant had left those. Now, it would be hard to prove, but that would most likely be a landlord liability in that case, which is not fair to the landlord. However, we want to stay out of lawsuits, and there's just going to be risk that every landlord will be taking with this type of business. So, but let's say they have been living there for 2 months, then all of a sudden, oh, well, we have bed bugs. Well, most likely they brought them in, and then they're going to be responsible for that. Again, that's more for a single family type of dwelling. Multi-unit dwellings, we don't know if they came in through the HVAC, that system from the neighbors. So it gets a little more complicated, and that, I might have to do another training video on some of these situations more in depth. But for purposes of this video, I just want you to have a basic understanding of the different insurances. Now, we cannot require that the tenant use our particular policy, but most of the time, in our leases, we are requiring that they do get bed bug mitigation, mold mitigation, and pet insurance on their policies. If they cannot provide that, then they automatically have to be signed up for our insurance that does cover that. And that also, I want to go back to the pet policy a little bit on that. Even though somebody says they don't have a pet, well, they may end up watching somebody's pet during their lease. And if that pet does damage, well, then that's going to help protect them as well as the owner. I want to move on now to the landlord insurance. Now, when we first start when we get the property, one of the requirements with every owner is that we ask to be listed as additional insured. And insured is a big word, not interest. A lot of times, like State Farm and different big companies, they will not just add our company as additional insured. They will put us on as an additional interest. If it's an additional interest, this is not going to help us in a few different cases, which I'm going to bring up a little bit later after this topic. And that's going to be more into the general liability. But they, we provide the the owner with our business address, and we say we need to be added on as additional insured. Now, what this does is if there's any type of case where we need to talk to the insurance company to get work done or to just be a third party, and that's really what we're doing, is helping the owners not have to deal with these problems. So it authorizes us to actually talk to the insurance company, and the insurance company won't talk to us without that particular designation. So that's very important. And if we're not added on there, then after something happens and you find out that we can't talk to the insurance company, then you have to talk to the owner and ask them to go ahead and call the insurance company and do what needs to be done to get that in order. Now, we also get a copy every month of from that landlord policy, just to make sure that they're still active. Anytime somebody cancels a policy or makes changes to it, then we will know, because we're actually added on as additional insured. And that actually goes back to any type of tenant policy as well. So if there's a tenant policy that somebody wants to use, which I don't blame them if they want to use something else, they can get more insurance, because I think on the tenant insurance, it's only up to $10,000 of personal property. Well, they may have $250,000 worth of property that they want to insure. They're welcome to get more insurance. We just require that they get that pet insurance, mold mitigation insurance, and bed bug mitigation insurance. And it's not that big of a deal if they only cover X amount of dollars, but like I say, it does add up, and it's a very inexpensive policy. I think we're only charging $12 or $15. Oh, I think it's $15 right now per month for that. So, but anyway, now on the landlord insurance, it's this is where I'd like to talk a little bit about the differentiations of renters insurance and landlord insurance now too, now that I've just kind of covered a little bit about that. The landlord insurance will cover if something happens, like let's say the stove malfunctions and causes a fire. Well, the landlord policy will kick in at that point, because that was not the tenant's fault. So the landlord policy will work with the renters and try to make everybody whole on that situation. Now, let's say the tenant is cooking on the stove and there's a grease fire and there's damage in the kitchen from a fire. Well, that would be a tenant caused accident. So the renter's insurance policy would be effective at that point. And then we work with the insurance companies to get everything mitigated. And then that's where we get our maintenance department in there into the home as well, to where they can get the vendors in there and schedule with the tenants, because we always want to make sure that the tenants are home anytime a vendor does show up into a home. Now, the third type of insurance I'd like to talk about, this is through, I believe we're using SureVestor right now. And this is a general liability insurance. Now, this particular insurance is mandatory and is in the owner agreement if the landlord's insurance policy does not or cannot add CREST PM as additional insured. Now, some companies just will not add us as additional insured and only additional interest. This is a policy that I think it costs pretty minimal, $15-$20 a month. And this covers Crest PM in case there's a lawsuit. Let's say somebody just falls down the stairs. It's a tenant. Falls down the stairs and decides to sue everybody. And that's generally what they do in this situation is they sue anybody that they feel that has deep pockets or insurance to cover them. Now, it's really not a landlord fault that they fell down the stairs. The tenants may be completely wrong. However, they will most likely drag our company into court, and then at that point, we need representation. And this particular insurance is going to help cover Crest PM in a lot of these faulty type of court cases that we're not even at fault. However, it does help us with not going broke as a company because of legal expenses that we may have to incur. So that does get a little deep. But there's one other policy I just thought of as I was talking, as I was just talking about the general liability. There's one other policy that I recommend highly to owners, especially those that have nice homes. And let's say they have a 3,500 square foot home and all that carpet that's in there. And, you know, tenants can do damage. No matter how hard we try to find the best tenant, they could. At one point, I had somebody that had a couple small dogs, and they just pissed everywhere, all over the carpet, and we had to literally change out the carpet and the pad, which costed a lot of money, well over what the deposit was for the tenants. And trying to collect from a tenant after the fact is pretty tough. So, you know, I mean, you can be in the right and still not get paid. So these owners end up absorbing these costs. Now, there is a policy for landlords that I think it's $500 a month. The last I saw, it's a real protection for them in case of evictions, which we're going to talk about in another training video about a little bit about that, you know, in more in depth. But there's a lot of costs that are involved in evicting somebody, including the attorney fees, posting fees. You know, if we have to, you know, get the people out and take all of their belongings out of a home, the locksmith. I mean, this could add up to a lot more money than, you know, we have for a deposit. And this insurance that we have that we can offer them actually covers the cost of all evictions. It malicious damages. You know, if somebody just goes through and decides they're mad at us or the owners and they just want to trash the place, it covers that, or any lost rent. So that's just something that they can look into. We don't look at these as a profit center. However, we really do want to offer this to the owners just for, you know, their own peace of mind, and it's also a lot less hassle for them in the long run. Now, if it's just a small unit and they don't want to pay, that's fine. I mean, but if I had a big house and I know the amount and causes of damages people can do, I would want that $500 policy per year. But that's just me. So anyway, I briefly touched over on all the insurance. It's good to to have a feel for this. I've got blanket answers on all of the insurance. I've got different things that I can offer you, but in a nutshell, there you have it. All right, have a great day. Thanks for listening.